Good afternoon, everyone. This is Michael O'Malley here at the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for June 14th, 2020, recorded around 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, taking a look here at the latest sea surface temperature anomalies last updated as of yesterday, again, we're really continuing to monitor the very significant decline of the ENSO base state here. Now we are heading more towards a La Nina pattern with wide-scale temperatures now falling at least to 2 full degrees Celsius below the long-term average, and that will likely continue to drop here over the next several weeks to months as we start to set up a more favorable La Nina state across this region. Meanwhile, here in the Atlantic Basin, this is a sign of a very favorable Atlantic main development region with warmer than normal temperatures here in the Atlantic Basin, really eroding much of this warmer base up here in the subtropical Atlantic, focusing all of our energy down here across portions of the Atlantic main development region, with now water temperatures running about a full half degree to, in some cases, a degree Celsius above the long-term average. And this will only continue to grow here slowly but steadily over the next several weeks to months. Again, we're getting stronger trade winds now blowing across this region, so this isn't going to warm up as significantly here over the next several weeks, but it will still warm up nonetheless, and we will likely see this very favorable base state by the time we get into the latter part of July and certainly then into August. And another way of taking a look at this is the upper ocean heat content values updated as of this morning. Again, once you start getting into these greens here, you're actually starting to pick up the more warmer water at depth. Once you start getting into the yellows, oranges, and then the reds, that's where your significant warmer water is at depth, not easily upwelled and cooler off at the skin temperature. These warmer waters, that 26.5 degree isotherm, goes deep down into the water, and we're seeing that here in portions of the Caribbean. This area is usually always decently filled with high upper ocean heat content for this time of the year, so that's not necessarily significant. But what is a pretty big deal is all this warmth down here across portions of the southern main development region, extending just past about 10 degrees north here, and that will continue to slowly but surely move its way off towards the north here as we get later and later into the hurricane season. And that's going to be one thing to watch, that we're really going to have to pay attention to how much upper ocean heat content can eventually build out here in portions of the western and eastern portions of the main development region of the Atlantic Basin. Again, this is more than supportive right now in the western half of the basin for tropical cyclone development, at least in the thermodynamic sense there. Now, real quick, once again, we are doing this unmanned camera system project, and we are going to continue to forward to it. We actually look to have testing starting later this week, likely this weekend, around Saturday or Sunday-ish. We will likely begin testing on the GoPro camera systems and the unmanned systems itself. We pretty much have all the equipment ready. We just have to actually now start to drill the hole in the case and get everything kind of situated. Again, if you guys do want to go check out more on exactly what I'm doing, I will leave my Twitter in the link in the description down below so you guys can go check it out. Again, these are going to be put out along the coastlines eventually in front of hurricanes. This year, we're staying locally to do a lot of testing, and then next year, we're really going to be able to start pushing this out further and further along the coast. So, you guys can go watch all the, the fury and the raw power of these tropical cyclones as they make landfall. We like to have that beginning next year. Testing phase is going to last into this year. Testing, partial testing begins actually this weekend. So a lot of great things coming up on these unmanned camera systems that are going to be live streaming hurricanes live, and anybody could watch them, not behind a paywall or anything. So if you guys want to check everything out, I'll leave my Twitter in the description down below, and I'll give constant updates on there as to what's going on with this project. Now, with that being out of the way, these are the actual sea surface temperatures here for portions of the Atlantic main development region from tropicaltidbits.com. Again, we continue to see how, earlier in the season we were talking about this 50 West area, how most of the warmth was concentrated over there. We've now started to see that warmth now begin to shift over towards about 45 West, so it's moving certainly in a more favorable environment for these tropical waves as they come off. Again, most tropical waves right now aren't coming off at these higher latitudes. There's a lot of dry air. So these tropical waves that are coming off here at the lower latitudes have decent, water temperatures to work with, at least in the skin surface temperature. Again, the upper ocean heat content isn't especially great. You're probably looking at the best OHC values about 5 north to about maybe 6 or 7 north. So still we have some work to be doing, but certainly these are the Cabo Verde Islands right here. These water temperatures, that magic 26 Celsius isotherm here is certainly creeping up and is going to continue lifting north here over the next several days or so and weeks. And again, we're just heading closer and closer to the peak of season. So, these are just one of the signs that, we're getting closer to that climatology ramp up of these tropical cyclones. If we take a look here at the western half of the basin, from tropicaltidbits.com. Again, the sea surface temperatures here in this region are doing fairly well here. Again, mostly at least all about 27 Celsius here in the tropics. We're starting to see this really shift up along the coastlines here. The low country here, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, and even out here just off the Outer Banks in North Carolina now, water temperatures are exceeding 26 to 27 Celsius. Out here in the Caribbean and out here across portions of the Eastern Pacific main development region in the Gulf of Mexico, water temperatures are running anywhere from about 29 to 30 Celsius. So again, at least in the thermodynamic environment, these sea surface temperatures are more than favorable. The upper ocean heat content is there. However, the vertical wind shear is not there. And if we take a look here at the vertical wind shear, you also notice there is a little bit of dry air out here, but the vertical wind shear is still running about 40 to 50 knots across this whole entire area. Actually, out here across portions of the main development region, running anywhere from about 50 to 65 knots of wind shear. So certainly a lot of wind shear there. And even out here in the Caribbean, or not in the Caribbean, the Eastern Pacific MDR, we're starting to see the signs of what could become a more favorable base state. If you take a look here at the 850 millibar vorticity, or the spin in the atmosphere, about 5,000 feet off the ground, once you start getting into these reds and whites, you're getting the higher cyclonic spin at that 5,000 foot level. Again, nothing really bundling, although we do have some energy starting to build out here, and some of the modeling has started to hint at something going down there. But if we take a look here at the Gfs Forecast, this is the 12Z run. We'll just run it out here for the next while. We'll take this out to really the next 5 days. And again, you're not really seeing anything coming out of the main development region. You do notice that we are getting a little bit of a stronger trade wind with more of this high pressure out here, suggesting these gradient flows will be out like that. That is going to suggest more and more of a African easterly jet to blow across this region, and that should at least slow down some of the warming out here in the MDR temporarily, but it's not going to completely hinder it. And again, on the European forecast model also, we'll take this out to the 240 hour, and there's almost nothing out here. So really not much of a signal. The tropics look to remain quiet for a while. However, in the longer term, this is coming off the European Ensemble forecast here for the 200 millibar velocity potential anomaly. These oranges and red colors, you're actually getting the sinking air in the environment. You're not getting any convection to develop. And then these blues here and greens, you're getting actually the rising air in the atmosphere. This area kind of correlates out here to the Nino regions out here. This area is portions of the Eastern Pacific and the Atlantic basins. And this over here is the Western Pacific and portions of Africa. So the Western Pacific basins should have some rising air over the next several days. We finally start to transition maybe into a little bit more of a favorable base state for the Eastern Pacific basin out here. By the way, as you go down this is going down with time, so this is the 29th of June, and this is the 15th of June, so tomorrow is right up here, and the 29th is right here. Again, we are starting to see the signs that the Eastern Pacific Basin might light up here. Within the next several weeks or so, we might be seeing the potential for certainly that velocity to favor rising air in this part of the world. And then certainly we have this rising air over portions of the Atlantic main development region in Africa. And that could spark off something towards the beginning of July. There's nothing in the model guidance right now that suggests that in the longer range models, but The velocity potential does favor that rising air. If, the European does come to fruition, this has the potential to favor portions of the Eastern Pacific and then the Atlantic basins here as wave come through. It's just another term for rising air in the atmosphere to come in across this region and should favor the Eastern Pacific basin briefly and then switching over to the Atlantic basin. So there's going to be a lot of interesting things happening over the next several days. And speaking of the Eastern Pacific basin, this is the European Ensemble forecast mean out to the next 240 hours here. And again, this is suggesting a large clump of some Ensemble members predicting tropical cyclone development out here in the Eastern Pacific basin. Not really worried about it. There's no immediate threats to the coastlines here of Mexico or the Baja of California. But it is something to monitor because any development right now in the Eastern Pacific that would actually shear off some portions of the Atlantic basin, and again, that shear is already running about 40 to 60 knots. It would only increase the shear, increase the sinking air in the atmosphere across portions of the Atlantic basin, and kind of shut it down. But again, we are watching some potential of what could be upcoming here over the next several weeks or so. But again, it's not a set-in-stone forecast. We'll have to check back and monitor things. So again, speaking of checking back, I'll be back here with another video forecast update tomorrow afternoon. Hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. I am Michael O'Malley, and I'll see you guys here then tomorrow afternoon. Stay safe, everyone.